encounter was the first of many, and by the end of breakfast, without anything having been said, the girl knew she wasn't going to be allowed downstairs that day. But she couldn't have known that it would be almost a month before she would leave the ballroom at all. After breakfast, the mother produced a history book, the exact same one the girl had been using at school. They lay on the bed, the sun leaking in the windows. The girl was reading aloud, but she soon sensed that her mother wasn't listening. Before, the girl would have made up something funny, some sort of gobbledygook, so that when her mother realized, she'd laugh and tickle her and make her start again. But the girl knew not to do that sort of thing anymore. They did an hour of history, then, at the girl's insistence, an hour of Irish. When their lunch arrived, the mother realized that they had no proper table. They'd had their breakfast in bed, but lunch was not a meal to be had in bed, let alone dinner. She could see that the mother was angry with herself for not thinking of this before. "But look," the girl said, and laid out a placemat on each side of the bed, then a knife, a fork, and a napkin. "Clever girl," said the mother, smiling. When the lunch things had been cleared from outside the door, the mother declared that they needed exercise. They waltzed around and around until the girl was panting more than she had in hockey practice. The floorboards creaked underneath their feet, and she imagined falling through to her parents' old room, while the guide was in the middle of a tour. She could hear people murmuring below. What would they make of the noises above? That was the first day. On the second, the father came to the door again, early. "Is Mum asleep?" "Yes," the girl whispered back. "Can you see the key anywhere?" "It's under her pillow. Haven't you got another?" "I'm afraid not." An intake of breath. "Don't worry. I'm sure she'll be better soon." "Will I have to go back to school then?" "Don't you want to?" "I don't know," she answered truthfully. The girl had wanted to go to boarding school. She was tired of having no friends her own age, of having nothing to do, of the endless sea, and of the way her mother had grown strange. But school was all opposites. Where she had had space, now she was confined. Where she had sleep, now she woke at the crack of dawn. Where she had no friends, now there were too many girls, too much talk. When the mother came to the girls' history class a few days earlier, her eyes seeking her daughter's, the girl had rejoiced. An afternoon away, perhaps with her grandparents. Would they let her curl up and sleep? But the girl and the mother had lunch at a restaurant in town, just the two of them, and after, the mother had swung the car north, away from school, towards the country, towards home. The girl hadn't dared to ask how long she would be back for, or why. At the beginning, she wasn't afraid in the ballroom. Until the summer, they had been taught at home, mostly by the mother, but sometimes, always more interestingly, by the father. The girl was used to settling down to some geography or history or French after breakfast. The mother would leave them work by their cereal bowls and disappear into the gardens, with a promise that she'd return mid-morning. But soon the days began to run into each other. There was nothing to mark them as different from the ones that went before. They slept, they washed, they ate the meals the housekeeper prepared for them. Boarding school had already accustomed the girl to very little privacy, but using the chamber pot was something she never got used to, though the mother retreated gracefully to the other end of the room when the girl went behind the screen. She learned to do the same, and took solace in the fact that it was removed from outside the door late at night, which suggested that it was the father, and not the housekeeper, who performed this task. The girl remembers when the snow began, flakes settling into the window panes, muffling everything outside, even the wind. The tourists were gone by then, and it was just the sound of her father and the housekeeper moving about below, shutting up the house, covering the beds in dust sheets, rolling up the rugs, storing away quilts no one ever slept under. The girl missed the sound of the visitors, the guide herding them from room to room, story to story. Surely, when the house was finally locked for winter, the father would say that they had to leave too. It was after the snow that the mother began to talk about the girl's brother as if he were still with them.